Hello, students. It's Sam, and we are on week 19. I hope you had a good break. We have been doing a lot of marking, so we didn't have a break, but we'll say more about that a little bit later. So today we're going to be talking about your assessments, the speaking and listening exam, and we're going to have a very brief introduction to question 5. So today you are going to understand how the examiner marks question 2 of paper 2. You're going to revise your own answer to question 2, paper 2, and you're going to understand what is required of the speaking and listening exam, which is something completely different, but we're going to start talking about that. And you're going to begin to prepare to answer question 5. There's not much interaction with others in today's lesson, but please remember to ask questions in the chat if you are at all confused, which you might be. That's absolutely fine. So in terms of our marking, we've marked all of question 2 pretty much. And what we've noticed is there is some good identification of the differences, but there's some difficulties with inference. Now, if you remember, question 2 was use details from both texts to write a summary of what you understand about the different boats. Now, what was happening? As I said, you were doing some quite good. You were really noticing the differences between the boats. One was big, one was small, one was safe, one wasn't so safe, or whatever. But when it came to the inference, it came a little bit unstuck. So what you were doing, really, a lot of you, was paraphrasing. So paraphrasing means to say the same thing, but in a slightly different way. That's not what this question's asking you to do. So to give you an example of paraphrasing, the boat was tiny, which tells us that the boat was really small and much smaller than the ship in source B. A lot of you wrote things like that. It's a good start, but it's just paraphrasing. It's not telling us anything we don't know. All you're doing is telling us what tiny means, which we know already. We're asking you to go that step further and draw conclusions about what it means to be a tiny boat in this big sea. So, better answer here. The boat was tiny, which tells us, oh my goodness, the boat was tiny, which tells us that because it was so small, it would be vulnerable in the vast waves and in danger of being upturned. Now that's inference because I'm drawing conclusions about what it means to be a tiny boat. Yes, it's small, but what does that actually mean? Well, it means, oh goodness, it could get overturned by the waves, etc. So you're looking for inference rather than paraphrasing. So what we're going to do, we are going to introduce you to some real student answers to this question and some real examiner markings of those questions. So what you're going to do, you're going to read a student answer. We'll start with student A. You're going to read the answer to question 2 from student A, and you're going to complete a very short quiz about student A's answers. And you're going to give them a mark. You're going to say what mark you think student A deserves. And then you're going to watch a video which explains how the examiner marked student A. So you're reading the answer, completing a short quiz, and watching the video. Don't worry too much about this quiz. It's really just to get your head around what the examiner is thinking about. Marking's really hard, so we're not necessarily expecting you to get that right. So don't worry too much. Just think, well, what mark would I give this? So when you've done that, you're going to repeat this process for 3 more students B, C, and D, okay? All of those things are in the classroom. So I suggest that you pause the video now and go and do that. And don't forget to ask us questions if you don't understand. Okay, welcome back. I hope that was useful for you in getting your head around what the examiner wants. We'll be doing something similar with questions 3 and questions 4 too, just so you get an idea of what you're really aiming for with those questions. So it's your turn now. What I want you to do is try and improve your answer for question 2. even if you've got a 6, it might be really good for you to see, well, how can I just push myself that bit further to get a 7 or 8? What is it that I need to do to get a 7 or an 8? And I want you to submit it as an assignment, which is on the classroom. It's a bit boring because it's awful doing something that you've already done, but this is a really proven way to get good, to just properly improve your answers. So have a go at that. If you got a 7 in this, or even an 8, I think there might have been an 8 or a 7. Anyway, not many of you, but if you did do that, if you are one of those people, don't do it again because there's no real need. Please just move on to the next point in the video. Everybody else, pause the video and go and complete this assignment. I must just stress, we won't have time to mark this week, certainly. We'll get a chance to look at it at some point, but this is for your benefit to really try and work out how to answer this assignment. So please do that now. Okay, so we're going to talk about something completely different now. We're going to talk about the speaking and listening assignment, which is a presentation. You haven't got to do this, but if you don't complete it, it appears on your certificate, speaking and listening did not do, which might be fine. You might not care about that. But if you do it and you do it well, it might say on your certificate, speaking and listening distinction or merit or whatever. Because of COVID, I think we can just do this remotely, and you can just do it to your teacher. You haven't got to do it to the whole class. So we'll work out how that happens later on down the line. But for now, what I want you to do, this might well be homework, I'm not quite sure how far you've all got, but what I want you to do is watch the video on completing your speaking and listening assignment in the classroom. So if you go to the classroom, there is a video on completing your speaking and listening assignment. It's about 60 minutes. So at some point during the week, watch that. It's from one of the examiners, or it's from one of the subject specialists at the exam board. So it's good stuff. She knows what she's talking about. And start to think, what might you do your speaking and listening assignment on? And we'll have more of a chat about that next week. The other thing we want you to do is read the Marcus Rashford letter. There is a letter by the footballer Marcus Rashford about free school meals in the classroom. Have a read through. It's quite long, so it might take you a little while. You can keep returning back to it. But make notes on what makes this letter persuasive for next week. Think about the kinds of words that Marcus uses. Think about the way it's structured. Is there anything else you can think of? I think it's a really persuasive letter. So just think about how he uses language to persuade the MPs he's writing to come round to his way of thinking. You don't need to hand this in, but it's really important that we're prepared for a discussion next week. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful. And if you are confused, of course, don't forget that we are here in the chat room, so please ask us for help. See you next week.